When I married Mark, I truly believed I'd found my person. He was steady, reliable, maybe a little plain, but in a way that felt safe. We'd met in our late 20s at a friend's barbecue. He wasn't the type to dominate a conversation or turn every head in the room. He was simply kind, warm, and easy to be with. Over time, his consistency became the thing I treasured most. Our life was comfortable, not cinematic. We bought a modest 2-story home with a fenced backyard. Adopted a small dog, Baxter, whose underbite gave him a perpetual look of indignation and who fancied himself a fearless guard despite being under 20 pounds. Evenings were often spent cooking together, or ordering pizza when we couldn't be bothered. Weekends were for errands, binge-watching shows, or taking Baxter to the park. It wasn't thrilling, but it felt like home. Somewhere along the way, though, the spark faded. We didn't argue much, but we didn't connect deeply either. I'd talk, and he'd nod without looking up from his phone or the TV. Our routines became so predictable I could anticipate every move before he made it. Then came Ryan. He was the account director for one of my biggest clients at the event planning firm where I worked. Tall, confident, quick with a joke, and charming in a way that drew people in. From our first meeting, he made me feel noticed in a way I hadn't felt in years. At first, I told myself it was harmless, just light workplace banter. But over time, our talks became personal. Late-night calls about event details drifted into conversations about his messy divorce, my lonely marriage. The line was crossed during a work trip to Chicago. After a long day of venue tours and meetings, he suggested a drink at the hotel bar. It was quiet, dimly lit, soft jazz humming in the background. We ordered wine, 1 glass became 2, and I found myself leaning closer, laughing harder than I had in ages. When his knee brushed mine, I didn't move away. When he held my hand, I let him. When he asked me upstairs, I didn't hesitate. I told myself it would be a one-time mistake. It wasn't. Every business trip after that became an opportunity. We were careful. No personal texts, no photos, airtight excuses. The secrecy was intoxicating. The Las Vegas convention was our industry's biggest event. A 5-day stretch that meant more time together than usual. I'd been counting the days. But I didn't realize my best friend, Jenna, had been watching me closely. She'd noticed the vague answers about my trips, the way I smiled at certain messages. One night, she told Mark she suspected I was cheating. Mark dismissed it at first, he trusted me, but something about her tone unsettled him. The morning after I left for Vegas, he booked a flight. Without telling me. That Friday night, Ryan and I were in his hotel room, half-dressed, pretending to talk about the next day's schedule between kisses. My phone buzzed. The message read, "Can't wait to see you. My stomach dropped. My hands shook. Ryan saw my face and knew something was wrong. When I told him, panic set in for both of us. I scrambled into my dress, hair still a mess from his hands. I told him to wait 5 minutes before leaving so we wouldn't be seen together. But when the elevator opened, Mark was there, sitting in a leather chair, scanning the crowd. I tried to look surprised. I started to speak. Then Ryan stepped out of the next elevator. He smiled at me, said my name in that familiar, warm tone. I watched the change in Mark's face, confusion, then suspicion, then cold certainty. What the hell is going on? His voice was sharp, loud enough for people nearby to notice. I stammered something about work, about running into Ryan on the way down. Ryan said nothing, eyes darting anywhere but at Mark. Mark didn't yell. He didn't demand explanations. He just looked at me like I was someone he'd never known and said, "We're done. Don't come home." Then he walked away. I chased him outside, heels echoing on the marble, tears blurring my vision. I grabbed his arm, begging him to listen. He stopped once, looked me in the eye, and said quietly, "There's nothing you can say that makes this better." Then he got into a cab and was gone. When I returned 2 days later, my key no longer worked. My things were boxed in the garage. Baxter was gone. An email from his lawyer was waiting. Everything fell apart quickly. Friends stopped calling. My family said they were ashamed. Work reassigned the client, and Ryan disappeared from my life entirely. Now I live alone in a small apartment with paper-thin walls and a view of the parking lot. Most nights, I lie awake, replaying that moment in the lobby, the instant his eyes met mine and everything unraveled. People talk about how affairs destroy trust. They don't talk about how they destroy the person you thought you were. I once believed I was loyal, decent, incapable of doing something like this. Now I'm the woman who burned her own life down for stolen moments. And the worst part? I can't even tell myself it wasn't worth it, because that would mean it was. The week was set to be a blur of networking, panels, and late-night sponsor parties. It was also the longest stretch Ryan and I would have together without needing to hide. I'd been counting down the days. What I didn't realize was that my best friend, Jenna, had been paying closer attention than I thought. She'd noticed my vague answers when she asked about my trips, the way I smiled at my phone after certain messages. One night over drinks, she told Mark she suspected I was cheating. When he told me later, he said he'd laughed it off at first. He trusted me, but something about her tone stayed with him. The morning after I left for Vegas, he booked a ticket of his own. He didn't tell me. He wanted it to be a surprise. That Friday night, Ryan and I were in his hotel room, half-dressed, alternating between kissing and going over the next day's schedule. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Still smiling, I reached for it, until I read the message. Asterisk in the lobby. Can't wait to see you. Asterisk. The blood drained from my face. My hands trembled. Ryan saw my expression change and asked what was wrong. When I told him, the panic in his eyes matched mine. We scrambled. I threw on my dress, hair still mussed from his hands, heart pounding in my ears. I told him to wait 5 minutes before leaving so we wouldn't be seen together. When the elevator doors opened, there was Mark, sitting in a leather armchair, hands clasped, scanning every face. I tried to look surprised, as though this was some happy coincidence. I was just about to speak when the elevator beside mine opened and Ryan stepped out. He spotted me, smiled, and said my name with that familiar warmth that gave everything away. I saw it happen on Mark's face, confusion, then suspicion, and finally, the crushing certainty. What the hell is going on? His voice was sharp, loud enough for people at the front desk to glance over. I stammered something about work, about just running into Ryan on the way down. But Ryan said nothing. His gaze darted anywhere but at Mark. Mark didn't yell or demand explanations. He just stood, looked at me like I was a stranger, and said, "We're done. Don't come home." Then he walked out. I chased him, heels clacking on the marble, tears blurring my vision. I grabbed his arm, begged him to let me explain. He stopped once, met my eyes, and said quietly, "There's nothing you can say that makes this better." Then he got into a cab and left. 2 days later, when I returned home, my key didn't work. My things were packed in boxes in the garage. Baxter was gone. Mark had taken him. An email from his lawyer waited in my inbox before I'd even unpacked. The fallout was immediate. Friends stopped answering my calls. My family, who had adored Mark, told me they were ashamed. At work, whispers followed me in the hall. The client I'd been handling was reassigned, and Ryan and I never spoke again. Now I live in a cramped apartment with paper-thin walls and a view of the parking lot. Most nights, I lie awake replaying that moment in the lobby. The instant Mark's eyes met mine and my whole life came apart. People talk about how affairs destroy trust, but they don't talk about how they dismantle the version of yourself you thought was unshakable. I once believed I was loyal, decent, incapable of doing something like this. Now, I'm the woman who torched her own life for a handful of stolen moments. And the cruelest part? I can't even tell myself it wasn't worth it, because that would mean admitting it ever was.